Good afternoon to everyone watching. The military isn't the real world, and it attracts certain types. You'll find the smartest, kindest people you'll ever know, along with some truly heinous criminals. And we voluntarily signed up to kill and die, but what we have more than anything is a loyalty to each other. In special operations, even officers are referred to by their first name. They have close ties to each other, so every operator knows their spouse and family will have help. Now, my feature Waypoint is a thriller. We're on a Memorial Day hiking trip honoring lost team members. A former Special Forces captain and the surviving members must escape a killer posing as a local legend known as the Bushyman, who has a connection to each member of the group. Now, the story begins during a deployment. Master Sergeant Walker gets an emergency Red Cross message that his sister was beaten into the ICU by their abusive father. He's late to the convoy he's hitching a ride on. It left, and a helicopter pilot offers a ride. But a rocket attack comes in, destroying the bird and launching Walker over the wall, and he's carried downriver. The unit fights the enemy for hours to get him back, but when it's over, Walker is missing. As that happens, a huge IED blasts the convoy. Boom! 12 dead. Manny loses a leg. Berto, the team captain, gets a shattered femur. Both men spend 26 months in recovery at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio. With half the team gone, the survivors spend months kicking indoors to no avail, and Walker is declared MIA. Today, the survivors are all out. Manny lives and works on his father's ranch, keeping the demons at bay. Kwame is least affected by the war. Jim invented a new type of tourniquet, and he's rich enough that he doesn't need his family's money anymore. Guy is now an MD and works for Jim, and is Jim's only real friend. Thompson is now a park ranger. Finally, Berto, the team daddy, severe TBI, terrible divorce, and 5 years of bad medical treatment. Berto has had a hard time both mentally, physically, and spiritually with his injuries. And this is where we open. A dense forest, midday. A barefoot man wearing a bloody t-shirt and shorts is running in the woods, chased and killed by a figure seen only as a ragged silhouette. Before dying, the man tells the figure, "You'll never get all of them, not even you." And he's killed with a tomahawk strike to the chest. The figure pulls the t-shirt, tearing it off. It's dropped and the body is dragged away. And now at a last chance diner on the highway, Manny, Kwame, Guy, Jim, and Berto meet for a Memorial Day trip, a 100-kilometer march, and they're remembering their lost buddies and getting Berto out in the real world again. We learned that Jim's husband, Ed, is a team member that didn't come because he was having a bad mental health time and went fishing with his dad. So two assholes come over and mock Jim's Pride wedding band. And after a few comments, one asshole pulls a knife, the other throws a punch, but Jim knocks out 7 teeth between two assholes to the guy's delight, because Jim is no joke. And so they drive into the park, arriving at sundown, where they meet Thompson just a few miles in. He tells them someone's running around in a sniper's ghillie suit pretending to be the old legend of the Bushyman. Besides scaring rednecks, they found a bloody shirt. Now, Thompson will meet them on their second night out, but he has to do river patrol in the morning. So Thompson leaves, and the group heads in. Kwame asks why Manny isn't asking if we should want to turn back, and Manny explains that if he has to ask that, then they shouldn't be out here. A short drive in, Manny parks, they climb out, ruck up, but while they're doing that, Jim gives an engraved Swiss Army knife to Guy for his birthday, and they have a real friend moment. All but Jim have brought their Yarborough knife, given to every Special Forces graduate, as Jim stored his because he does his best not to remember. Berto's knife is 3 full inches shorter because the blade saved his leg from a flying piece of steel during the IED. Guy and Manny both brought handguns. They step out and double time to their camp. And now we arrive at Camp 1 and Act 2, and they're remembering their lost team members. And when they mention Walker, it leads to the discussion of his alleged war crimes where he accidentally killed civilians and prisoners that resisted. A few loud voices, and they quickly feel ashamed, so they honor him as well. Manny explains that Walker's sister killed herself on the anniversary of Walker's declaration of MIA. She fell through the cracks, unfortunately. At Camp 2, with the seriousness behind them, they sit drinking the team's official bourbon. Military special. It's real, and it's the cheapest booze on post. Jim brought a liter. Manny and Berto don't drink, but everybody smokes weed. Berto gets a headache from his TBI. But after a few minutes, the bourbon gives Guy bubbly guts, and he runs into the woods. Very quickly, though, boos and comments lead to an argument between Manny, Kwame, and Jim. And it starts with Jim says he knows they resent his success and that Guy is his only friend. But while all that goes on, Berto notices the silence in the area. They all call for Guy. Nothing. So Berto leads them in a search. Manny finds Guy calling the others over. Guy has been decapitated and is hanging by his legs. Manny has his gun drawn. When a throwing stick comes and hits him in the hand, breaking his finger. It's basically a boomerang that doesn't return. At the midpoint here, they must leave Guy behind and escape because whoever it is hidden and quiet and they may be armed and we can't have Thompson showing up to something unaware. They have to get to the river by sunrise and meet Thompson on his morning river patrol. A giant thunderstorm explodes over them as the group escapes north to the river. Thompson arrives at the abandoned camp and he knows something's wrong, so he calls for help as the rain reaches him. The group walks into a field of mechanical Vietnam-style booby traps, but Kwame's skill guides them through and they continue. Back at the abandoned camp, Thompson and his rangers find nothing, and in the area where Guy's body was is nothing but the throwing stick with 2 pieces of green jute cord like in a ghillie suit. The heavy rain has scrubbed the area of blood. Now back with the group, they've run into a cliff that has no way around and they're forced to climb, but as they're climbing, the bushy man emerges from the woods, climbs, reaches Manny, grabs his prosthetic. Jim, seeing that Manny's trapped, slides down and hits the bushy man. All 3 slide down. Manny slams his ribs into a rock. Jim kicks the bushy man's head so hard that his hood flies back and we see his MIA team member, Walker, with a huge scar over his head. He hits Jim in the back with a tomahawk and they both drop. Jim dies. The bushy man is gone. Manny makes it to the top and they all escape, saying, now that we know what we're up against, we make a stand. But as they get some distance in a field of unseen traps, Kwame is killed by a spiked weighted board from above. So Manny takes his machete and Berto takes his Yarborough. Now between Berto's headaches and Manny's leg, they hide behind a temporary waterfall to get some rest. And as they rest, Berto explains to Manny that the reason for the convoy that day was to talk to command and Walker was being sent out as special forces. But while they talk, the moonlight highlights a ragged figure through the waterfall and the 2 crawl away escaping and plan their stand, only for us to find that it was Thompson who was searching. And he calls in his position from the radio, let him know his situation, and runs back to the boat. And once Thompson is gone, the bushy man emerges from right beside where he was standing. Now Berto and Manny are going to make their last stand on a hilltop with a steep slope on the side. Manny hands Berto a flashbang to call for the bushy man, but the bushy man arrives, so Berto puts it away. The bushy man comes and he hides in the woods, and as the 2 search, the bushy man jumps out, kicks Manny in his broken ribs, and runs in again. Now, Manny's ribs have injured his lung and are filling with blood. He has maybe an hour. So Manny tells Berto to believe, and when Berto refuses, Manny kicks him down the steep hillside. And as Berto falls, he hits another rock again with his head. He loses Kwame's knife and he has to crawl back up. And when he gets up there, as he's crawling up, we see Manny is fighting well, but he's getting tired. He stabs the bushy man in the chest, and we find that he's wearing a vest, and Manny calls him a bitch for it. When Berto reaches the top, we see the bushy man kill Manny. Berto slides down to get away. The bushy man tears off after killing Manny. As Berto runs, he starts getting hallucinations and pain, but then the sound of growls and barks chase him. It's wolves. And ahead of him is a wide rocky outcropping that traps him. The alpha and beta wolves attack, but Berto's knife makes quick work of them. He tosses the flashbang at the 3 remaining wolves. Boom! And he disappears. And the rangers, at their boat ramp, hear the boom and head downriver. Now Berto escapes, discovering an enclosed lean-to that turns out to be the bushy man's hooch. And as he's investigating, bushy man shows up. Berto fights back, throwing him onto a pile of abandoned gear and using a pepper spray to make his escape. But as he sprints off into the woods, we see hanging in the distance in the trees all the men who have died, including Ed, Jim's husband. He's the murdered man from the opening and wears the identical Pride wedding band as Jim. Now in our final act, Berto wants payback. So he readies for a fight, quickly carves 2 throwing sticks and a small club. He muds over himself and takes off with the fight, with the knife in one hand and the club in the other. He finds the river, discovering it's below a high cliff. He devises a plan, pulling some parachute cord and tying it to the tree. But in the forest, the bushy man arrives. He creeps, Wham! He's hit with a throwing stick. He doesn't know where it came from. A second one hits him. It gives him a bearing. He turns and looks, and there's Berto in the distance. The bushy man runs to get him. When he's running, he trips, falling between a cord that Berto strung between the easiest routes. Berto is gone. Now it's dawn, clear skies. Berto is at the cliff above the river, and the bushy man arrives, revealing Walker. And the reason why this is happening, and it's because they forgot his sister, and she had a nervous breakdown, killing herself. And the way Walker sees it, they forgot about her after they forgot about him. Berto apologizes sincerely, but a fight breaks out. And even though Berto is very skilled, he's unable to maintain. And he maneuvers the fight to the tree where he tied the paracord. He sweeps the bushy man with a hard kick, loops the lasso around the bushy man's ankle, runs, jumps off the cliff as the bushy man runs and trips on the cord. The current blasts Berto downriver faster than Walker can chase. Berto violently bounces through rapids, and at the last set of rapids, a jumble of log traps him with under the current beside the cliff that meets the river. Now Walker arrives as Berto's vision blurs. He jumps on the boulders holding his weapons. Berto's eyes close. The bushy man walks towards Berto when pop, pop, pop! Thompson has arrived. 3 rounds into the bushy man, and he crumples over onto the rocks. Thompson and his rangers help Berto and take him away. They put him in their boat and they head out. The rangers call for backup. And when Thompson asks Berto if there are any survivors, he maintains his silence as they ride off into the sunrise through the boat. But later, maybe after the credits, a helicopter arrives, dispatched by the rangers. It gets over the rapids where the bushy man was, and we see nothing. And we end. Now, before we go, remember what's happened and think that the bushy man is each man's PTSD. It chases some, it catches some, it gets some by accident. But he is their PTSD. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.